Good morning from UC Health Training Center. It's a beautiful day for some football. Fans once again are packing in to see their favorite players. Only 3 more chances to get autographs and see the team up close and personal. Hello and thank you for joining us for Broncos Camp Live, powered by Ford. I'm Phil Milani alongside Matt Boyer, and we're very pleased to have 9 News' Rod Mackey join us here on set.
It's a big day.
Yeah, when you say we're, I think you mean you, because I don't think Matt feels the same way.
Oh, my God. I spent 3 years next to Rod as a producer, photographer, MMJ, cookie runner. I did all of the jobs.
Yeah, we saw on your Twitter
I did. Those are my wife's chocolate.
He was best at bringing the cookies, by the way.
My wife's chocolate chip cookies. I make that face, too. In fairness to Rod, when those cookies come out, I make that face, too. So no disrespect to Rod at all by that one.
At least Matt is good for something, right?
Yeah, I know.
The weight's dropped since Matt left.
Well, let's get talking about football a little bit here. The Broncos' first preseason game coming up on Saturday. How long, Rod, do you think this first team is going to play?
I mean, from listening to Vance yesterday, it sounds like it's going to be 2 series. I can't wait. I mean, everyone talks about preseason football. Who cares? First of all, any football is better than anything else on TV. Second of all, the way this preseason game shapes up with just the quarterback battle. I mean, so many storylines. Case Keenum, we finally get to see him against his old team. I cannot wait. And, of course, he goes against Kirk Cousins. They swap spots. We didn't know if Cousins might be coming here. And then you got Paxton, Trevor take 3, which is going to be great. See what happens in the backups. And then Kyle Sloter, who was last year's preseason hero, and he's going against now Chad Kelly, who we've seen some good things against in that scrimmage. So, I mean, this is going to be a great game. I can't wait. And it's not that this is getting old, although this is getting a little bit old. I can't wait to see that first preseason game.
Now, last year in the preseason, I know Von Miller, we didn't see him until Game 3. Do you think that we're going to see the same thing this year, or do you think Von's chomping at the bit and, too anxious to get out there?
Well, I mean, the thing is, from what Vance said a couple days ago about Von, he wrecks practice if he goes as hard as he can. Von doesn't need the preseason. Everyone, there's players and then there's Von. He's just at such a different level. So we may see him a little bit. He's got to get out there. He does have to start getting the chemistry going, with Bradley and everything else. But the biggest thing is you cannot – I mean, nobody can get hurt, starting with Case and then Vaughn. So whatever it takes, they could start – this could be September 9th. Vaughn's are good to go.
We see him without the pads there. How big are these vet days? I mean, this is the first time we've seen him without pads.
Well, it was so funny yesterday. He's so charismatic with the fans, and he goes and he signs the autographs, and he gets the whole one side of the field, and then starts walking away, and they start chanting his name, and all of a sudden he comes running back. And we were doing a Facebook hit with Mike Kliss there, and the fans were like, what just happened? We thought, and it's just Vaughn running back to sign more autographs. He's something special.
Yeah, a lot of the guys getting a little bit of a vet day here today. A breather. We saw the depth chart come out yesterday. Bradley Chubb on the first team. Is that a big deal, Rod?
I mean, you draft a guy in the first round, you want him to make an impact. You draft a guy 5th overall, he better make an immediate impact, and I think that's what we've seen with Chubb. Now, the coach made it clear yesterday. He's been given nothing. He has earned this spot. But you got to get him on the field. I mean, he's a special kind of player. We saw it in college. We've already seen it through OTAs, minicamp, and now training camp. I can't wait to see this guy get out there. I think that was the only reason I would say it was a little bit of a surprise is because that first depth chart is – they give the edge to the vets. I mean, Jeff Hireman's number 1 right now. He hasn't been out there. It's one of those things the vets get the edge. And that's why I think if Freeman, even if he were playing better, than Book, maybe they give him the edge anyway because those vets at the beginning get the edge on the depth chart and then things happen. But this rookie class, I mean, look at how hyped it's been since they've had it. And I think they've been better than billed. They're all there on the 1 and the 2 line.
Yeah, they've been fantastic. The rookie's a big storyline coming into this first preseason game. You're going to be working the sideline, first preseason game Saturday, Rod. What are you most looking forward to about that night? Is it the sideline interviews with your guys like E and DT? What's the thing that you're most looking forward to?
That's the best, although I will miss Talib.
Okay.
I mean, last year, especially after Talib got into it with Todd, I think it was Todd Davis at the time, and, he comes over, and I'm like, what happened there? Nothing. We're all good. We're all good. I mean, so, yeah, we'll miss Talib, but that's the best part. I think we're going to get the quarterback, so seeing what Case said right off the bat about going against his former team, can't wait for that. And, I mean, those guys, I mean, they have so much fun on the sidelines with that stuff. That's absolutely the best part of it. Plus, the thing is, I mean, fans in the stands, and we're way up in the press box, you don't get the impact of football. And you can't see it here because they're not going all out. being on the sidelines, as long as I've done it, it's amazing to watch the speed and the ferocity and just the contact. I don't know how Steve Atwater continues to look so good because those guys just blow each other up.
And, Rod, you have a whole new broadcast team this year, right?
Yeah, Steve Levy's here, so before the game I'm going to talk a little hockey. That'll be great.
Oh, there you go.
And then Brian Greasy, I mean,
Michigan man.
Honestly, go blue. As good as it gets. Let me take this back. The best part about doing the sidelines or doing the broadcast is these production meetings. That's when we get time. The players come in, the coaches come in. They kind of tell you some off-the-record stuff. I don't say a word. I just sit there and listen to Greasy talk X's and O's with these guys when they come. It's fascinating. The knowledge, as good as Brian Greasy is, I think he's one of the best guys doing this. So that's going to be fun to watch.
Steve Levy, no better theme music than when the NHL was on ESPN, right?
Oh, yeah.
Nothing was better. Well, Rod, thank you so much for taking some time to join us this morning. And let's hear a little bit from Bradley Chubb talking about a little bit downplaying that first depth chart.
I don't put too much weight on being first because I could be knocked down at any time. So I just try to keep coming out here and keep working. Having an effective pass rush on every pass down. Sometimes I get out of myself and I just got to make sure I'm effective on every play. I know I'm not going to get to the quarterback every time, but I just got to make sure I'm a presence.
How excited are you to get out there and actually play a game?
Oh, I'm really excited. I was telling somebody I haven't played since November. Like, when you think about it, it's crazy. I haven't played a game since November. So going out there in front of a crowd for the first time is going to be fun. Those sacks you see in practice that you don't know if it's really there or not, we're going to find out if he were really there or not. So it's going to be fun.
Have you thought at all about just putting on that Broncos uniform for the first time?
Oh, yeah, it's going to be crazy just to be able to play a game in it. I mean, I've been doing photo shoots and stuff like that with it on. It just hasn't really hit me yet. But I feel like on Saturday when I'm in the stadium with all those people yelling and screaming, it's going to really hit me.
And it'd be cool to see Chubb in his full uniform for the first time in front of that home crowd. I mean, it is a preseason game, but it's exciting to see the players come out, especially the rookies, the new guys, Case Keenum in that orange uniform. It's going to be something to see on Saturday night. Our thanks to Rod Mackey for hopping on the show for a little bit this morning. Now we're pleased to welcome in Steve Atwater.
Fellas, what's the word?
What's up, man?
Hey, man, it feels good out here. It's football weather.
Well, you get a little cloud cover. It's not as hot. It's nice out here. Probably the nicest day to come out.
Oh yeah, I bet the guys are gonna be flying around with no pads on them.
Camp has been pretty not that hot this year.
Right.
I mean, it's been pretty cool out so far. Players must be enjoying that. Steve, the preseason game coming up on Saturday, it's going to be interesting after the first team goes out. Paxton Lynch will be out there playing against a guy we're all familiar with, Trevor Siemian.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to watch those two guys. You know, both of those guys were our 1 and 2 quarterbacks last year. Last year especially. And it'll be interesting for Paxton if he can show everyone that he can go through his progressions properly and complete some passes and make some good decisions. And, you know, I'm sure Minnesota will be looking at the same thing from Trevor Siemian on the other side. And we know Chad Kelly's going to get a chance to play quite a bit as well. How much we don't know. I would imagine after the first team is out the first 2 series that, you know, Paxton Lynch will probably go at least 2 quarters and then Chad Kelly finish up the rest.
Everybody's going to make this about Paxton versus Trevor, but for Paxton, he just needs to get on the field. He needs to focus on his playing time, and we've heard as much about that in the building. It's just about getting him reps. It's about getting out there, going through his progressions, like you mentioned, Steve, and just getting into the flow. He hasn't had a chance, really, to string together a lot of games, whether that be due to injury or other circumstances. I think it's going to be very important here for him to string together a couple of really nice quarters.
Yeah, they're looking for some consistency out of Paxton, and above all else, try to stay healthy out there. Steve, you mentioned Chad Kelly. This is really going to be his first time playing in quite some time as he rehabbed from the injury last year. You think there's a rust factor there for Chad?
Probably a little bit, especially with the game jitters and that. But he's come out, he's cleaned up his practices here as of late. He's had some pretty good practices. If he can continue to stay on that trajectory that he's on, I think he could do well out here. But again, he hasn't played in a year, hadn't played in front of the fans and all that, and in the Mile High City. So it'll be quite an experience for him, and hopefully he can keep his cool and do his thing.
Not real game reps, but he has made the most of his opportunity. We saw a couple days ago. Phil, you were right down there in the corner when he dropped that pass to Jordan Leslie.
Right at me.
And I think that's what you need to see from Chad, making the most of the guys that he's throwing to, whether that be a Mark Chapman or a Demaryius Thomas. I think that just getting in the flow with those guys here will translate into those preseason games, whatever his snap count is.
Yeah, and we heard Vance Joseph say that playmaking is really Chad Kelly's strength, so you would imagine that in a game where he's allowed to run around and try and create things off script, that's where Chad's skills will really come out. And since we have Steve Atwater up here, let's talk about the safety position.
There we go.
A little bit, talking about Justin Simmons. He's being asked to do a little bit more this year, playing that nickel corner position, covering the slot. You think he'll be okay in that position?
Yeah, I think he'll be just fine with it, but I think that speaks to the weakness of the cornerback room, though, that, you would move a safety over to play that position. And I think that, man, if Tremaine Brock continues to not practice and if we have any injuries, we may have to at some point add another cornerback to the room because, Justin is one of our, best safeties, and he's really good back there patrolling the middle of the field and half field when he has two deep coverage. So we don't want to, take one strength away and we don't want to lose that part of our game by having him play corner a majority of the time.
When you were a safety, what if they said, "Hey, Steve, go cover a wide receiver"?
No. No. They knew better than that. Tight end, yes. Receivers, no. And Justin, has the quickness. He, 6'2", nice, tall, lanky guy who can cover really well. So it's a blessing to have. And I think our safety position is really strong, though. So if he has to do that some throughout the year, I don't think there'll be much of a drop-off.
Well, he did a nice job last year covering the tight ends, especially later on in the season. And speaking of tight ends, this will be our first chance to really see Jake Butt, too.
Yeah, everybody's been talking about Jake Butt. This is the first time we've seen him since that Orange Bowl in 2017. And Jake's a competitive guy to begin with. However, in this Minnesota game coming up, he's going to have some extra motivation because of some familiar faces on the other side.
It's going to feel great getting out there, putting on the game uniform, being in our stadium and actually playing. That's going to be the best part, just kind of running out of that tunnel. I also got two buddies, Pat Elflein and Ben Gideon on the Vikings, two friends that I go way back with. So excited to hit Ben. I'm sure he's excited to hit me, and hopefully we come home with the win.
It could be checkers, and Jake Butt would be as competitive as they come. You could see the fire in his eyes. It's like, hey, man, it's a preseason game. He's like, no, I got to show up my former Michigan teammates that I mean business.
And in that interview, he actually had a piece of grass on his forehead. I pointed it out to him. I was like, hey, you've been practicing pretty hard. His response was, I'm surprised my sweat didn't just wash it away. So, Jake Butt is pumped up to get into the game on Saturday. Our thanks to Steve Atwater for hopping on the show there. Now we're pleased to be joined by the one and only Andrew Mason.
I appreciate that because there's a more famous Andrew Mason in the business world out there, but you saying one
That's
and only?
More to us, Mace. You're the most famous.
Good. I'm touched a little bit.
Mace, how much do you think we'll see from Jake Butt on Saturday?
Well, maybe not as much as you'll see from Matt Lacoste and Brian Parker, just because they are still kind of easing him back up to speed. But I would expect to see him out there for a couple of possessions. I wonder if they're going to try to get him in situationally. Say, maybe he's not playing between the 20s, but do you want to get him out there in the red zone? Because that probably is going to be his first big-time use as he gets into regular season work this year, is as a red zone target. Maybe if Case Keenum can get the offense into scoring position when he's out there, maybe that's a good chance to get Jake Butt in there, run a couple of routes, target him in the end zone on one play. It'd be a good way to get him started.
And of course, Jeff Hireman was listed as the first tight end with the depth chart coming out yesterday. Speaking of the depth chart, looking at the returner positions, we saw that Philip Lindsay was listed first as a kick return. Was that sort of a surprise for you?
Not really, no. I think even though kickoff returns are a lot more similar than punt returns in terms of skill set than they used to be because of the new rules changes, I think Lindsay's kind of nudged himself ahead of guys, not only like Isaiah McKenzie, who was the first-team punt returner, but guys like Brennan Langley, D'Angelo Henderson was in the mix at one point. I think he's kind of the top dog there at this point. And the other thing with Lindsay and McKenzie, it's interesting to see their position on returns relative to where they are on offense. Of course, Lindsay is the fifth-team running back, but I don't think that accurately reflects where he is in terms of his chances of making the roster. I think his kickoff return spot is probably a little more indicative of where he stands.
We just got done talking about Jake Butt, how excited he's going to be. I can't imagine there are going to be too many more guys that are as excited than Phillip Lindsay to put on that Broncos uniform, whether it be for a preseason game or a regular season game. The Denver South kid going to be wearing the orange and blue for the first time. And one interesting thing also, too, I thought, Tom McMahon going out of his way this week to praise Phillip Lindsay for his tenacity in those special teams drills. Those things can get monotonous, but I think that McMahon saying he's got full faith in Lindsay is going to spell good things for him down the line.
Yeah, excited to see the CU product run out there on the field and see what he can do at kick returner, although that position has been a little diminished just due to the rule changes this year. Talking about punt return, though, I know the fans are very excited or anxious maybe to see what Isaiah McKenzie can do out there.
Yeah, I think anxious is probably the right word given the issues that he had with the ball security last year. And with McKenzie as the top punt returner, what he's doing out here in practice, it's well and good, but the tale is going to be told by preseason work. And unfortunately for Isaiah McKenzie, if he shows a relapse of the ball security issues that he had last year when he fumbled 6 times in 28 opportunities, including fair catches, it's going to be very tough, I think, for him to stay on the roster just because I don't know that they can have confidence in him after last year's fumbles if that persists into gameplay this summer.
Anxious, cautiously optimistic, however you want to phrase it. I think that the fans might be skeptical, but seeing the work that he's done in the offseason, put in a lot of work on his body, caught a lot of punts this offseason in preparation for this camp. He's come back ready to go. Yes, he had a tough 2017, but he's taken all the proper steps to get ready for this year.
He's done everything he has to.
Right.
But now it's a question of whether you go out there under the lights, and that can be kind of a different animal between the work he's gotten, the advice he's gotten from guys like Rick Upchurch. He's looked in the right directions to find improvement, and he's put the time in. Now the practice needs to make perfect on the field.
And I think to give you an idea of where he stands, head coach Vance Joseph said yesterday, hey, if Jordan Taylor was healthy, he would be the first team punt returner. Of course, Taylor on PUP, so it's Isaiah McKenzie who will be running out there under the bright lights on Saturday night. And it can be a little bit of a different deal following that ball under the lights in the stadium. McKenzie talks about his nerves.
It's all about those first 4 seconds. I've been learning those first 4 seconds inside your stomach, inside your mind. It's all about anxiousness. But after those 4 seconds, you got to do what you've been doing. And I got to catch the ball, and I got to make a play, or I got a fair catch, and put the offense in a good field position. And that's what I'm going to do.
Interviews after practice.
McKenzie going to have to get over those nerves on Saturday night and make sure that he just secures that ball. And we all know, hey, he did it in college. We know that he can catch the ball here. And then take a look at today's practice. Just in the shells, we check out the O-lineman going through some reps there. Yeah, I know. We're excited to see Jared Valdir do a little bit of work too, right?
Yeah, the Hillsdale College guy. He's had an interesting road, Mace. I know that he has gone to the Cardinals, Raiders before that. Do you think he's finally found a home here in Denver?
Well, I think the Raiders was a pretty good home for him for a while. He played 6 years. I think the big question here is he's going into the last year of his contract, of course, that the Broncos assumed after trading for him from Arizona. And the question is, can he handle being a right tackle? If he can do well and also stay healthy, because injuries have prematurely ended his season the last 2 years. If Jared Valdir stays healthy and shows improvement from his form last year, which was his first NFL season at right tackle, he could play his way into another deal that keeps him at least in league, maybe even in Denver for the next few years, and that could give him kind of a second home similar to what he had for those years in Oakland.
We saw it in that mic'd up segment with Case Keenum. Great chemistry with Valdir coming over, giving him fist pumps after the plays. I think he's going to be a great addition.
With health being so important for that each and every spot along the offensive line, I can't imagine that they'll get too much run here on Saturday against the Vikings. And as we're winding down here, Mace, what's coming up on the radio here today?
Well, just the usual coverage of practice. Of course, you can tune in and find out what's going on during the practice. We'll have a couple of interviews after practice as well. And if you want to go back and listen, it's on DenverBroncos.com. It's on the podcasts of the Broncos, which you can find on iTunes, etc. And also on Orange and Blue 760. We had a good conversation with Brandon Marshall after yesterday's practice, talking about just how different this defense is compared to the last few years, how it's kind of evolved its coverages, evolved some of its calls, not only to account for new players like Bradley Chubb, but also for how the game has evolved. Some of what they're doing is a reaction to the success that teams like the Falcons, the Eagles, and the Patriots had against this defense the last couple of years.
You guys have a great setup out there. Just a little tent bringing over the guys right after practice is over. That's Orange and Blue 760. Watch that all day long. And, of course, get the best of that day's shows on at 6:30 on Channel 20 for Orange and Blue Daily. And that's going to do it for us. Our thanks to Rod Mackey for hopping on earlier. Sorry about no cookies, Rod.
Rod, we'll get you later, I promise.
Steve Atwater for hopping on, and Andrew Mason. I'm Phil Maloney. Thanks to Matt Boyer for hopping on. And this has been Broncos Camp Live, powered by Ford.